Step back in time to 332 BC, when the island city of Tyre faced the ferocious might of Alexander the Great's Macedonian army. After a brutal 7-month siege, Alexander's conquest unwittingly fulfilled age-old prophecies foretold by prophets Isaiah and Ezekiel. But how did this triumph shape Alexander's growing belief in his own divine status? And how did his actions influence the pivotal event that would echo through history, the crucifixion of Christ? Join us as we unravel the complex web of prophecy, sacrifice, and their profound implications for the Redeemer of mankind. Upon the island fortress of Tyre, the assault unfolded with the tumult of a tempest upon the waves. Alexander the Great's armada, a formidable host of ships, besieged the city with relentless fervor, each vessel a menacing shadow upon the horizon. For nearly 7 months, Alexander's forces, undeterred by the staunch resistance, labored tirelessly to breach the formidable city walls. The defenders of Tyre, their valor tested by the unyielding assault, fought tooth and nail to impede the progress of their would-be conquerors. Now, amidst the cacophony of battle, the once proud city stood as a fallen bastion, clinging to its fading glory with a defiant final breath. In the center of the city, within the dark halls of the royal palace, Mevassa, a frail and aged man, observed the unfolding tragedy. Amidst war's chaos, his solitary figure embodied the grotesque contrast of unshakable faith and the despair that permeated the besieged city. As the clash of arms echoed through the palace walls, he sought solace in the dim recesses of his chambers. An advisor to Tyrian monarch Asimilkos, now hiding somewhere within the palace, awaiting his grim demise at the hands of Macedonian soldiers, Mevassa, a Levite priest, stood alone. Clutching ancient scrolls, weathered by time yet unwavering in their guidance, he remained steadfast in his belief. As the Macedonian soldiers, swords drawn, breached the chamber's sanctity, Mevassa stood undaunted, his gaze fixed upon their leader with unwavering intensity. "Soldiers of Macedonia, your enemy stands not before you," he proclaimed. "You must escort me to the presence of Alexander, for urgent matters demand his attention." A moment of hesitation hung in the air as soldiers weighed Mevassa's words. Yet faced with his resolute demeanor, they relented, lowering their weapons. After a brief search and questioning by their commander, they instructed him to remain in the chamber, departing and leaving the priest to his uncertain fate. Alone once more, Mevassa stood at the window of his chamber, peering out onto the panorama of Tyre's demise. Once a gleaming emblem of wealth and prestige, now veiled in smoke and despair, the city sprawled before him, conquered by the relentless march of invaders. At twilight, the soldiers returned to Mevassa's chamber. Their commander eyed him suspiciously. "You seek audience with Alexander?" he asked, skeptical. "The information I bear is of paramount importance, knowledge that must reach the ears of the great conqueror," the priest declared, his grip on the ancient scrolls unwavering. The soldiers subjected their captive to a thorough search, their hands sifting through the sacred Hebrew scrolls with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Finding no weapons concealed within their weathered folds, the commander signaled his approval with a silent nod, and they led the priest through the corridors of the palace, toward its inner sanctum, where destiny beckoned. Entering the vast throne room, Mevassa sensed the gravity of the moment. There, seated upon the golden throne once occupied by the deposed King Asimilkos, was Alexander, exuding an aura of authority and dominance. His presence was commanding, his gaze sharp and penetrating, seeming to delve into the depths of one's being. In that grand chamber, he was a titan amidst the currents of history. "Speak, priest." Alexander's voice resonated with authority, commanding attention amidst the hushed whispers of courtiers and soldiers alike. Prostrating himself before the conqueror, Mevassa raised the scrolls aloft as offerings of truth and revelation. "Great Alexander," he began, his voice imbued with the fervor of conviction, "the once mighty city of Tyre now lies in ruins by your hand. But understand, your deeds are not merely conquest, but the realization of ancient prophecy." Alexander's brow furrowed in confusion, his skepticism evident. "Prophecy?" he queried, his disbelief tinged with intrigue. But Mevassa remained steadfast, his faith unshakable. "Indeed, your majesty," he affirmed, "the prophets Isaiah and Ezekiel have foreseen the fall of Tyre, and you, through divine providence, have become the instrument of their vision. With reverence, Mavassa opened the scroll, its prophecy illuminated by torchlight. "Behold," he declared, "this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Tyre, and I will bring many nations against you, like the sea casting up its waves. They will destroy the walls of Tyre and pull down her towers. I will scrape away her rubble and make her a bare rock. Out in the sea, she will become a place to spread fishnets. For I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. She will become plunder for the nations, and her settlements on the mainland will be ravaged by the sword. Then they will know that I am the Lord." In the quiet of the throne room, to Mavassa's surprise, Alexander's demeanor softened, a spark of respect shining in his eyes. "You harbor a bold spirit, priest," Alexander commented, to voice such audacious claims in the presence of a conqueror. Contemplating the priest before him, Alexander pondered aloud, his gaze fixed upon Mavassa. "I sought to honor our god Heracles with sacrifice. Yet the king who defied me now lies silent, his realm in ruins, and I occupy his throne. Was it the will of your god, or the might of Heracles that decreed this fate? This city," Mavassa began, "succumbed to the temptations of sin and folly. Immorality, envy, and idolatry festered within its walls. Its wealth and power birthed arrogance and corruption. The Lord has granted Tyre the very sin it desired most, and thus it reaps its rightful reward." "So the people of Tyre were a sacrifice to God?" Alexander interjected with a hint of curiosity. "Our scriptures say that when God fashioned Adam, the first of our kind, he bestowed upon him a sacred command, to abstain from eating fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, under penalty of death, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. Yet, when Adam and his wife defied the divine command, God, in his boundless mercy, extended clemency. He banished them from the garden, but not before fashioning garments of animal skin to clothe the errant couple, shielding them from the shame of their nakedness, to wander the wilderness. Thus, it came to pass that the animals, whose skins became the vestments of Adam and Eve, bore the weight of their sin, their lives taken as atonement for human transgression. From that moment forth, the sacrifice of animals became a sacred rite, a solemn offering to reconcile humanity with the divine. Yet the blood of beasts could never suffice to redeem the soul of man. Thus, it is foretold in prophecy that a Redeemer, an anointed one, shall emerge, and he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and a radiant dawn of redemption shall illuminate the world." Alexander, intrigued by Mavassa's words, responded with a wry smile. "Is it your belief that forgiveness from your God requires the price of death?" The question, a cunning trap, aimed to dismantle the core of divine mercy. "Not a price, your majesty," Mavassa replied, his words seemingly guided by an ethereal force. "There is no forgiveness without a cost." In a moment of contemplation, Alexander regarded the priest with a thoughtful expression. "Your wisdom intrigues me," he confessed, his tone earnest. "You shall remain as my advisor, guiding me with your counsel and faith." "It will be my honor, your majesty," Mavassa affirmed with a bow. Dismissed from the conqueror's presence, he was escorted back to his chambers, the weight of their exchange heavy upon him. The next day, Mavassa remained secluded in his chamber, immersed in prayer and contemplation. Unaware of time's passage, he was interrupted by Macedonian soldiers, bearing news of Alexander's summons. In a manner markedly more casual than before, Mavassa found himself ushered to the throne room. "Priest," Alexander greeted warmly, "your words from last night have occupied my thoughts. As you so astutely observed, mere animals prove insufficient for true atonement," Alexander continued, his tone contemplative. "No multitude of goats could quench the divine thirst for justice. Come, join me on the balcony," Alexander beckoned. "There is something I wish for you to witness." Together, they emerged onto the balcony, greeted by the sweeping vista of the Tyrian Bay. But as Mavassa's eyes scanned the shoreline, his breath caught in his throat at the sight that unfolded before him. Row upon row of wooden crosses stretched along the beach, each bearing the weight of a human soul condemned to the agony of crucifixion. 2,000 lives, suffering in a grisly display of power and dominance. What is all this?" Mavassa murmured, his voice choked with horror and disbelief. Alexander's expression hardened as he surveyed the grim scene below. "The defiance of this city has tested my patience for months. Those who fell defending it met their end as warriors, not sacrifices. Yet these people now before us bear the cost of forgiveness for Tyre's pride. Its debts are settled, and I grant it my forgiveness. But only God forgives, Mavassa muttered. You are not divine. Speak with care, priest, Alexander retorted, for I hold the world within my grasp, his piercing gaze scanning the grim panorama before him. And I have ordained that this shall be remembered as a warning throughout the land for all who would defy my will. As the cries of the crucified echoed, Mavassa felt a deep sense of foreboding grip his heart. Amidst the shadow of the crosses, he discerned the grim truth. His deeds had birthed a monster, one now deluded into deeming himself divine. But in that moment, standing on the balcony overlooking the Tyrian Bay, the priest understood that the pagan spectacle before him was more than earthly power. It was a sign of divine providence, shaping the fate of nations and human history for generations to come. A body on the cross, though initially a stark symbol of suffering and torment, would ultimately transcend the grim visage to embody a profound truth, a truth of sacrifice, mercy, and above all, love, that will eventually redeem mankind.